part of them. Last Sunday, for example, it was almost impossible to get into the Waratah room because of so many people had gathered there to hear that particular presentation. So keep that going. It really is enthralling to see that happening. Many of you know that there are books written on the power of the sword, the power of habit, the power of now, the power of one. And yes, there are some written on the power of the past. Former Bishop of Edinburgh, Richard Holloway, once a guest of mine here, he wrote in his book on forgiveness, he said, "One of the things that most depressed me when I went out visiting parishioners as a priest was the frequency with which I encountered people who would rehearse in minute detail incidents from decades ago that had scarred their souls. Though often surprisingly trivial, the continuing impact of those events was painful. Some people are not just reacting to an event of 10 years ago, 50 years ago. Some are playing out a collective pain that has its origins 2 or 3 centuries ago. The Bible says again and again, the fathers have eaten sour grapes and the children's teeth are on edge. Gregory Landsman, in his book, says we all have scars, be they emotional or physical. It makes no difference. They still stop us from functioning to our fullest. In some instances, there is no articulate memory of an event. It has come down through the generations by the stories told one after another, one to another, with inevitable distortions, misunderstandings, emotional loadings, and a lot of unfocused energy, or energy expended on a diffuse spectrum of anxiety, hostility, grief, and grudges. So the past event, there it is. A family member is killed by a hit-and-run driver. Nothing can change that reality. A person in his 90s is the survivor of gas ovens that destroyed thousands upon thousands of people. Nothing can change the reality of the past. You didn't do well at school. You lost your job. You had a split in your family. Your marriage failed. Nothing can change the reality of the past. Dr. Marianne Legato wrote a book called Why Men Never Remember and Women Never Forget. It was a woman who wrote the book. Nothing can change the past, but you can change the rules of the game. God did. If you take up that mythic story of Jonah in your Old Testament, it says God gave Jonah a job to do. He was to tell the people of Nineveh to change their ways or God would wipe them out. They changed. Pretty sensible. God changed. But Noah didn't want to change. Noah was upset. You might say, well, that's a mythic tale, so we won't take too much notice of it. Oh, but Jesus changed the rules too. He said, you might be set on getting even with somebody. You might want to teach them a lesson, blow for blow. But he said, change the rules. If somebody gives you a whack on one side of the cheek, turn him to the other. I don't think he meant that to be literal. He was saying, transcend the hit-back mentality, transcend the hit-back response, change the rules. I reread a paragraph in Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov. You might like, if you have it, you might like to read it, page 878. "We are not long on this earth," he wrote. "We do many evil deeds and say evil words. Let us therefore take advantage of the favourable moment for our being together here to say a good word to each other. That is what I am doing. While I stand here, I take advantage of my moment to say a good word." And if you read on, you'll hear him translate that into action. And he adds, "It is necessary to act by faith that we do harm to no one." That we do harm to no one. We cannot change the past, but by faith we do harm to no one. It is our moment on earth. Change the rules. Of course, the rules keep changing. Sometimes that upsets us, but sometimes they change for the better. When I was a youth, wearing helmets when bike riding or horse riding would have been laughable. Change the rules for the better. Not so very long ago, smoking was looked upon as something anybody could do. But we now need to change the rules. Or drunk driving was often something we laughed at. We now know we need to change the rules for the better. In our parents' generation, in my parents' generation, if the doctor suggested you see a head doctor, you would think that you were on a one-way trip to the lunatic asylum. Today, a psychological assessment and a psychological consultation is regarded as a very sensible wisdom. Today, we know that our illnesses, if they don't arise from psychological and emotional factors, then always in the recovery process, the psychological mind and mood factors play a very important part. When I started Ken Miller 50 years ago, there was one other psychologist in private practice in this city. This year at Ken Miller, we're training 160 postgraduate psychologists. In our clinical practice, we now have at least 300 medical practitioners referring patients to us. The rules have changed. Sometimes it makes us anxious when anybody talks about or shows that they're changing the rules. And in so many instances, the change of rules can be positive, necessary, beneficial, even life-saving. I've been reading a review of Jim Newton's book on President Eisenhower, President of the United States back in the 50s. And before that, he was indeed one of the world's great generals. We would expect this man to be into war, because that was his life. But it was he who said how difficult it is to back away from threats of force once issued, and almost impossible after the shooting starts. He spoke of the madness of war. Eisenhower had been to wars, seen the carnage of wars. Many expected he'd want to go on with more wars, but he changed the rules. He said, we've got to negotiate. We've got to mollify. We need to have summit meetings. We need to make accommodation. And in the midst of it all, we need to play a game of golf. Yeah. Perhaps that was where even potential enemies could win and lose and accept the rules that could change in other places. We can see that the change of rules can be for the best, but often in our everyday, we get angry when the rules are changed. And so I often write down on a piece of paper 6 or 7 important words. I'd like to give you those words. They all begin with A. And maybe at lunchtime today or afterwards, you might get a piece of paper and see if you can remember them, because I think they're worth remembering. You see, sometimes when people change the rules, we are appalled or astonished. Put those two together, number one. Or we're angry. Change of rules makes us anxious. And then comes the accommodation, the adaptation. Can we be sure? No, we can't. So there's a degree of apprehension. And then there's acceptance. 7 of them. Appalled, angry, anxious, accommodate, adapt, apprehension, acceptance. I've looked after many people who have been awakened at 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 policemen at the door. They thought that nothing like this would ever happen to them, but somehow the rules changed. Their devoted life, their religious life, their belief in God had brought them to the point where they thought they were blessed, when suddenly a huge trauma was dumped on their doorstep. How often people find that their religion should help them in their chronic pain, and yet their chronic pain goes on for 1 year. Some people I see, their chronic pain has gone on for 60 years. Frank Porricker and Theodore Price in their article said, "When pain lingers," that was the name of their article, "When pain lingers." And they said 15 to 20% of adults worldwide suffer from persistent and lingering pain. Half the primary care patients who develop chronic pain are likely to be still jammed up with that lingering pain a year later and longer. The origin of that pain may be elusive and indeed mysterious, but we know something in the past has come to trouble those people. And so our concern is not often focused on something negative that occurred in the past. We often get tangled up with the negatives, but perhaps we might turn it around and see, is there anything positive in the past, now in the present, as this pain lingers? It is a pain, a physical pain, a memory pain, a mind pain. Now, the pain has an ambivalence about it, a two-wayness about it. The past can hold on to us with its pain, with its possessions, with its promises. That's the past. But it also comes in to tell us that we can learn its lessons, search for a constructive relief from pain, absorb the softness and the soothers that are present in life if we can, focus on those powerful distractors and those good and strong counter-enjoyments that life holds for us. We know that the past can poison generation after generation of people, can poison us with prejudice without us realizing. Yes, often, without us realizing how much we've become hosts to hate and hostility. The past can suck the human spirit dry And being so depleted, a person has no real strength of spirit to live constructively in the present, and so they don't. They have no real strength of spirit to get their mind and their whole life back into some kind of positive focus for the future. We can all get lost in our hindsight. We can all become captives of our if-onlys. You can't change the past, but you can change the rules. The past, you see, can be an enriching reality sometimes. It can give us, the past can sometimes give us a good feeling about ourselves, some encouragement, in fact. Yes, and even some inspiration, some pleasure from the lives of other people. Peter Isaacson, a long-standing friend of mine, has just published his new book. He launched it on Friday evening. My copy of it. It is a collection of 25 eulogies that he has given for friends and wartime comrades. And these eulogies stretch from January 1960 through to January 2009. And yesterday morning, as I was getting my papers together to get order into this address, the phone rang and there was Peter Isaacson. I had his book in my hand. And I said, I'm just reading your eulogy to Jean Harper. She died back on August 6, 2002. And in the eulogy he said, throughout her life, whatever the circumstances, Jean retained an aura of glamour and style. Through the various good and dark times, her successes shared and her sorrows borne alone. And in the last years, a stroke. Through them all, she faced them with such grace and fortitude. She was a woman, he wrote, she was a woman of boundless family devotion who gave pleasure, help, and loyalty to so many. Here was just one story of the past. He's called the book As I Remember Them, Men and Women Who Shaped a Life. One fragment of the story there, so vividly told by Peter Isaacson, made me feel very deeply how the past need not be all poison and pain, need not stifle our spirits or suck them dry, but the past may become powerful enrichments for what life can yet be. Difficult, of course. Peter published the eulogies not only to honour the past friendships and past times, but they evoke a sense of enrichment to our lives as they describe good memories that flow from the wide reservoir of our humanity. It reminded me of another book, and I'm going to talk about that again, this other book, at another time. It's called The Top 5 Regrets of Dying. Many people keep records of the events of their lives, the past. And often these records tell the story of troubles, of sadness, of failure, of pain. Times that might perhaps have been forgotten, but times that refuse to be forgotten. So she recommends in her book, a gratitude journal. I'll read you what she says. For the past 20 years, I have kept a gratitude journal where at the end of the day, I write a few things down for which I was grateful. Often there were lots of things to be grateful for, but occasionally through the darkest times, I struggle to come up with any. Emotional exhaustion had worn me out to such a point that even finding a few blessings was an effort. Well, I think it's rather unlikely that we're all going to go out and write gratitude journals. But in these times, our times, where negative emotions are more common than ever before, when anger is all too ready to explode, when cynical attitudes abound, when we are highly versed in finding fault, it is great therapy and great theology to notice something for which we can be truly grateful. Well, I've given 6 points, have I, in this address, and here they are. The new faith comes through this address, I hope. The new faith of Jesus of Nazareth says this: change the rules, transcend the hit-back response. Number 1, change the rules, do harm to no one. Change the rules for the better. Change the rules. The past can so easily hold you captive. Let it go and learn its lessons. Absorb the softness. Change the rules. The past can so easily suck the human spirit dry. But let some things of the past enrich our life and all humanity like the lotus blooming. Number 6, change the rules. A new faith brings strength to change what needs to be changed. A few words just about that. With many past events, we can't change them. We can't press the rewind button. We can't go back to the dying scene and do it all over again. Deeds cannot be undone. So what do we do about all of this? Is there a miraculous forgiveness? Is there a comprehensive cure? Is it possible to pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain? In our current idiom, is there not a corrected version for our botched life video? How can there be? How can there be? When wars leave more than 60 million people of our likes, pulped and dead. Or Peter Isaacson tells of the 110 airmen that flew across Europe in this war, 56,927 young men, young airmen, did not come back, or came back in pieces. Surely we need to change the rules. Recall President Eisenhower's realization that war can have no real victor. We need to rebuild the ruined cities. We need to care for the survivors from both sides, all sides. We need to learn afresh the ways of kindness, if you like, the ways of love. We need to speak words of hope and comfort, not cynicism and hate. We need to celebrate every resurrection and resilience of the human spirit. And if possible, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Now that needs faith. Believe me, that needs faith. You can't put that together by just saying the words Sunday in and Sunday out. That needs faith. Faith. a new faith at every point. The energy of faith to change the rules for the better. Faith in a bigger, stronger self, because forgiveness is impossible unless there is a strong self. Weak selves don't forgive. The strong self needs faith, more faith. Faith in the process of restoration. The process. Faith in the good spirit of life. We need faith in the good spirit of life. Faith that the good spirit can be active in each one of us. And faith that the good spirit can change all humanity. That's the new faith. Would you please stand? And the blessing. The blessing. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forward. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.